Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and Triumphant Light was just released, and I've taken a look at some of these cards already on the channel, as some of them were revealed before the set came out, but not all of them, and also I have some more thoughts on the ones that were already revealed, but there were some really cool cards in the set. It has 96 cards, not 96 unique cards. I don't remember how many. Oh, I guess I could just look at it like... I don't remember. There's a bunch of unique cards though, and a bunch of really cool cards as well. This is the, I guess I'd say, first set that, if we just look at the list of sets, we had the first set, which is Pocket, and it's a really big deal. And then we had the first mini set, which was a big deal, and then the first new main set. This is not really any first, so I feel like it's not necessarily setting a precedent. However, it did introduce a new, what I like, kind of like a new mechanic, which is cool with the Arceus stuff, and we see some really interesting cards in this set. I think there's some more complicated cards because if you look at the EXs in the game, there are not that many with abilities. For example, there are a few. There's Cresselia, Gengar, Aerodactyl, and Darkrai. I think those are the ones. And then three of the five EXs in this set have abilities. So that's really cool to see, as well as some other things. As I said, the Arceus stuff, which is ability based, so I like abilities a lot. And we see some interesting trainers and support Pokemon as well from this set. But we'll just kind of go through the cards in some order. I'm not going to talk about all the cards. Like this Vespiquen, I don't think is super interesting. I mean, I don't know. Let's just start with Grass, though, right? It's the first type. We'll start with Leafeon EX. Leafeon EX is obviously an evolution. It evolves from Eevee. You could play it with the other evolutions. That's really awkward to play the evolutions together because you can only be playing two Eevees, and so that means you'll only be able to play have two evolutions in play at once, two different ones or two of the same one. Again, there's only one grass evolution, which is Leafeon EX, but this one says, oh, and there's a regular Leafeon as well, which I think is okay. It's a 90 for 2, but you're probably not playing that because Leafeon EX is a really good card here. Let's ability Forest Breath. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may take a grass energy from your energy zone and attach it to one of your grass Pokemon, and then your attack is 70 for 3. Your attack isn't super good here. It's not terrible. I think this is really good with Celebi EX, and it's pretty good. I would not play this with Superior, because I think that's just too many moving pieces, or too many cards, but and you could just get a ton of energy on your Celebi EX, and that seems pretty good. You cannot accelerate to, again, your wrenched EVs because it's colorless, and so that's a little weird. But regardless, Leafeon EX is a really solid. You need a bit of switching, which isn't. It's not that bad, to be honest, with this deck, but you do need to keep that in mind. But Leafeon EX is really good. There's some other grass Pokemon from this set, so I guess I'll talk about those here. Well, no, I'll talk about Vespiquen here as well. 120 for 3. Theory to itself. I don't think this card's super good. I think it's pretty mediocre. Not terrible. You could pair with Leafeon EX. I don't think it's the best partner. I don't really know what the second best one would be behind Celebi EX. But I know Mega EX is like pretty solid. I don't think it's an amazing partner for Leafeon EX. I think it's fine. But regardless, Vespiquen is okay. I mean, it does the same amount of damage as Mega, but it has much less HP, especially after it attacks. It does 30 to itself, but still, it's okay. Solid damage output. Pretty good damage output for a one-point Pokemon here. Then we'll talk about I guess we'll talk about the other evolution here, the Glaceon. Glaceon EX is a really cool card here. Well, it's pretty cool. Its ability set, its attack's 90 for 3, which is fine. Obviously, a little better than Leafeon's, but that also has energy acceleration built in. But obviously, there is water energy acceleration, and Manaphy can accelerate to Eevee, which is really interesting. And then there is Vaporeon, which is a card that moves water energies around, which you could pair with Glaceon EX. I think that's legitimately like solid, especially if Vaporeon sees a bunch of play. You could put in one Glaceon EX within like Vaporeon deck, and then be playing two Vaporeons, two EVs, and one Glaceon EX. Obviously, you can't get both Vaporeons and the Glaceon EX into play. Like all of those, well, you can't get them all into play at the same time. We'll actually come back to that later. There's an amazing card from this set that is going to change the game. But anyways, your really snowy terrain says during Pokemon checkup, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, do 20 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. To be honest, Glaceon EX is like really similar to Poison. If you poison, this is just poison essentially. Um, it's a little different. If they switch out or evolve, then you will still be hitting them. This is okay. It's solid. It's kind of fun. I think this ability is cool. I like abilities that like do damage. Kind of ping your opponent's Pokemon. Um, Nothing absolutely insane about this Pokemon, but again, you do have the Vaporeon, which is cool. It works with Manaphy, and it's good. It's not absolutely insane because its attack's pretty basic and straightforward, and your ability is just adding a little bit of extra damage, but it is adding extra damage. And again, it's a bit better than poison. It's not drastically better, but it's a bit better. And also, this will get around, like, for example, Marshadow as well, because Marshadow just, it works. It will not trigger it. So that is nice. That's not super meaningful, as meaningful as it would be in the regular TCG, but it still is nice. Those are, I guess I'll go down and talk about the rest of the EXs then, because I don't think Glaceon really has any partners from this set. I mean, yeah, nothing really seems like it synergizes with it much here. But then we have the Garchomp EX. I think this Garchomp EX is pretty bad, to be honest. It does 50 snipe for one fighting, and then 100 for three. It doesn't work with Cynthia. It doesn't really work with the regular Garchomp. I wouldn't really play it with Lucario. Like, Lucario is a really good fighting Pokemon. There's a lot of really solid fighting Pokemon. Though, like linear attack has 50 snipe, so Lucario, Lucario I believe only does active buffing. Let me just double check. Yeah, that it only buffs. Oh yeah, because it doesn't buff Hitmonlee. So that doesn't have very good synergy there. And then Dragon Claw is okay, boosting that to 120 or even um 140 or even more if you somehow can do that. It's okay. I mean, I guess if you keep pushing it up a bunch, it's really good. But you need to be hitting that 140, which is a stage 2 and two stage 1s, which is like so much stuff, and 3 energy on a Pokemon where you can't accelerate. If this could be used with Cynthia, it would be better, but not even amazing, right? It doesn't even synergize that well with linear attacks, so I unfortunately think this Garchomp EX is pretty bad. I've said this about a lot of stage 2s and stage 1 EXs, but yeah, so far they've definitely been weaker than the basics. Then we have Probopass EX. This one's actually really interesting. I don't think Garchomp EX has any cards to synergize with it from this set specifically, but Probopass EX does. There are a few tanky metal Pokemon in this set. I mean, that's metal's thing, but this one is very tanky. It has 160 HP on a stage 1, which is a bunch. Then you have 90 damage for 3 during your opponent's next turn. This Pokemon takes 20 less damage from attacks. 90 damage is not very much, obviously, but you do have this tankiness. You're taking 20 less, so if your opponent has to keep hitting into you, which they probably will, then they're not going to be able to knock you out super easily. And then, a lot of people, I talk about this on the channel from time to time. It's kind of like 180 HP if they're one shotting you, but if they're two shotting you, it's like you have 200 HP. If they're three shotting you, it's like you have 220. So the more times they have to hit into you with their attack, the more essentially HP you're going to be having, the more you're going to be tanking. So this is really nice, and there is the support card Adamant, which is during your opponent's next turn, all your metal Pokemon take 20 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. This is kind of like blue, but it's like doubled up. Blue's very mediocre. It's a card that's like playable, but it's definitely a niche card. Adamant, I think, is much better. Taking minus 20 is pretty good. I don't know exactly the use case of this. You could use it with Melmetal. You could use it with Dialga, but I think it's really solid with Probopass EX. You could power up Probopass EX with Dialga EX, which is like okay, though I don't think it's actually that good. I think you could just kind of manually attach. Um, yeah, I think Probopass EX is solid. I don't think it's amazing. Its damage output's just not very high at all. And its tankiness is like good, but it's not absolutely insane. You're tanking some, but your opponent will be able to get through this within a few turns, probably in the same amount of turns that you're knocking them out, unfortunately. But I think this card's solid. Like, you could heal with Shaman, or even Butterfree if you really want a bunch of healing. So maybe Butterfree Probopass EX could be good. I've not really messed with Butterfree much lately, to be honest. I might do that at some point, but um, yeah, I messed with it some like when it came within the first set, then kind of stopped. But Probopass EX is, I think, a really cool card. I think all the EXs are, to be honest, except for Garchomp. And then the last one is Arceus EX. Arceus EX is a kind of weird card. We see this effect, which or this like thing on it, this symbol, and this is for I guess like the Arceus cards. This is like the quote new mechanic that I was mentioning. Um, it's not exactly a new, it's not really a new mechanic, but it's like Pokemon that interact with Arceus or Arceus EX. Oh, there's a regular Arceus as well. So Arceus EX is this one does or has 140 HP, which seems like the normal for basics. It's I thought it was a little high. Um, like I thought the norm would be a little lower at first, but no, it looks like it's 140. And then your ability says this Pokemon can't be affected by any special conditions, which is mediocre to be honest. It's I feel like it's not something that matters very much. Special conditions, you got burn, you got poison, you got confusion, you got sleep, and you got paralysis. And I can't really think of how like the last time we got hit by one of those. Probably like Mr. Magic EX on the solo battles, but like Wheezing, there are some Pokemon that inflict special conditions. I just think they're not very common, and they're like meaningful, but it's not absolutely insane. But in the decks that play them, it does depend. They are like kind of reliant on them, but anyways, this ability is like good to have. It's not that meaningful though. The attack here though, it's pretty solid here. 70 and 20 more for each damage for each of your bench Pokemon. So this can be hitting. Let's say you have a full bench, which is not very hard to do. And then you're going to be hitting 130. 130 is a really solid. It's not like obviously perfect. You'd rather be doing 140 to one-shot Pokemon like Arceus EX, but still, it's very solid damage for three colorless. Mega EX we were talking about, I mentioned earlier. Mega EX's attack, assuming you have a full bench with Arceus EX, it's Mega EX is just kind of worse. I mean, it does hit weakness, but it's a little different. But still, Arceus EX is a card that is you know, it's a really solid attacker. It's not absolutely amazing, but it's pretty good. And then the regular Arceus does, it's different, but I'll mention it here. It has 120 HP, and does 100 for 4, and you discard a random energy from this Pokemon. I feel like you can't really power this up. Um, this card might be played because you need there's a bunch of Pokemon. The other Pokemon with the symbol have abilities. I'll just pull up the first one here, Carnivine. I'll actually pull them all up. I did talk about, I believe, all of them, but I will be going over them again. Um, so we see there's a bunch from the set. It's like a big thing. Really, all the cool Pokemon have this ability here. In my, or yeah, Pokemon. There's some cool trainers, but you need one of these in play to trigger the abilities. Cardivine here says it does 30 more. This is actually really solid. I think I don't really know to be honest. But it says if you have one of the Pokemon in play, the Arceus or Arceus EX, then this does 30 more. These all buff themselves, I believe. They don't buff the Arceus. That would be kind of cool, but no, that's not how it works. You do 50 for one or 20 for one. Cards like this have been pretty good. Um, with like Skarmory, Rotom. There's one I'm forgetting, but anyways, there's a few of them, and they're like pretty solid. Um, Nothing like really crazy to say about this card. You do need the Arceus to play. It's not like free to get into play, but it's actually pretty easy because you could play 4 copies between the EX and the baby, which is pretty nice. Overall, Carnivine is solid, not like too crazy. These are like all different types as well, I believe. Oh yeah, there's one of every type except for one of them. I think I don't fighting. No, I don't know what type's missing. I think one type's missing one. I really want to figure this out. I never mind. I think I can't count. No. So yeah, Carnivine's okay. Um, Heatran gets free retreat, but there's another one that gets free retreat. The Rotom also gets free retreat. Rotom does 20 snipe for one colorless. This is like very mediocre. This is a card you could toss into Arceus decks. It's colorless, so you could put it in any of them. And on top of that, it also gets free retreat, which is cool. Rotom's not amazing, but it's fine. Not too much to say here, but I think you could play it. And then Heatran here is 2 fire. It does 40. If it does damage on it, it does 80. Um, Yeah, this like seems pretty mediocre. It's not super tanky. I mean, it's it's just solid in terms of its HP, but it's not like it's always surviving. It probably is, and then it's not like 80 is absolutely insane either. It's like it's again solid, but I just don't think this is what I'd go for. This is definitely not what I'd go for personally. Is it okay? It's okay, but I think you're definitely pushing it here. Heatran's mediocre, and getting no retreat like it just isn't super meaningful. Yes, you do have three, and going from 3 to 0 is really nice, but um, I don't think you're looking to retreat this Pokemon all that often either. You could use it again as a pivot, and it does have more HP than the Rotom, so you could use it there. The Abomasnow, as well as the uh oh no, this is the I don't remember which one does which. Okay, it looks like this is the only one with this ability, so it says its attacks cost 1 colorless less if you have Arceus EX in play or Arceus. So it does 80 for 2, which is like solid, like absolutely insane, but it's pretty decent, and so I think this card's okay. Yeah, there's not too much to say about it. I was kind of saying 80 for 2 on Heatran wasn't super good, and that's a basic, but it's situational. It's like the second time you're attacking. So, Abomasnow, I think it's okay, but not amazing. Raichu has the same. Which of these have the same ability? Yeah, so Magzone and Raichu have the same ability, which says if you have the Pokemon at play, the Arceus, then they take 30 less damage. I would say I think it's way better on Magnezone than Raichu. Magnezone's really tanky. It's metal, so you have Adamant, and that's good, and so you can use that, and you have the ability as well, and you have more HP as well. You have 140, and then Raichu, you don't have all that stuff going for you, so you only have you might be getting one shot at. It's not a, it's like a nice ability to have. You're moderately tanky, but it's not super tanky. Your attack's like solid here, 40 for 2, and then 20 your opponent's bench Pokemon, which is like solid. Um, and there's also Lieutenant Surge, which does move energy to your Raichu. That's like not super useful. It's only 2 energy, and I don't really know where that other energy is coming from. Um, it could be from your Arceus EX, I guess, but it seems pretty mediocre there. There are also other Raichus which you could play in the same deck. I don't really love this Raichu. I think it's kind of fun. You have some different options with the different Raichu lines, and um, a few different things going on, but overall, its attack itself is not super good, and it's not super tanky either, so it doesn't really have any major strength. Magzone, on the other hand, is super tanky because it has 50 more HP and also Adamant, as I said. Attack 80 for 3 is not super good, but it is definitely an attack here that is usable. You can kind of get by using it. Again, not super great, but it's passable, I think here. And then you also have the Magneton. Magneton's not super good with this, but it is a card that will allow you to. You probably would play it. The Lightning one, the Metal one is not good, so you can use the Lightning Magneton to get one of these energies, get the colorless paid, and maybe even a second one to retreat if you need to. It's not super good, but it's okay. And then you have the Tyranitar. This one says, oh, this is the same as the Carnivore. It's a very different card, but same ability. You do 30 more. It's 130 for 4 on stage 2. 4 on stage 2 without like any energy acceleration, if I'm not mistaken. Seems pretty bad. Is it passable at time? I don't know. This seems pretty bad. I feel like the extra damage is not super great. I mean, it's like nice to have. It's good, but um, yeah, this is a lot of energy on stage 2, so this seems pretty awkward. And I don't think the previous evolutions are good either. Um, yeah, they're not great. And then we have the Crobat. This is my personal favorite of them, with Cunning Link, which says once during your turn, if you have the Arceus in play, then you may do 30 damage to one of your opponent's active. Or to your opponent's active. This is kind of like Greninja, doing 30 instead of 20, except for the fact that obviously you're not going to be doing the damage wherever you want. You have to be doing the damage to their active. You can play this with Greninja. You could do Crobat, Greninja, Arceus. That's probably you're probably not going to be able to do that. I mean, you can't even get all the Greninjas and Crobats to play with the Arceus, but this is okay. You can pair this with Darkrai EX as well to be like doing lots of damage that way. you do need Arceus, so you can't do it with like Drudgen. I mean, you could, but then you need Crobat, Arceus, Drudgen, Darkrai. It's like a bit of a mess, but overall, I think Crobat's really cool. I definitely really like this card a lot. It's not a ton of damage. It is a stage two, and so if you ever played with Greninja, you know it's kind of slow and not super easy to set up. Stage twos aren't super easy. They're gonna take you probably 4 turns. I think getting a turn three is not like it can happen, but it's not super common. Or it probably is more common than not, but you can't rely on that and say like if I don't get this, I lose. But yeah, Crobat's I think it's a card I'm really excited to play with. It's not absolutely amazing. It doesn't have like perfect synergy with Arceus either. Like Arceus isn't necessarily looking for a bit of extra damage, but um, Crobat is a really cool card. And then we have other cards here that are also interesting. I don't really know which cards to talk about and which ones not to. Like Noctowl is pretty whatever, so I'm just gonna kind of skip over a bunch of these um, because I don't think they're super interesting. I'll talk about the ones that I think are cool, that are kind of worth talking about, I guess. Oh, there's two charms. I didn't realize that. This one does confusion and 40 for one in the stage one. Confusion's like solid. Obviously not against Arceus EX, but against other stuff, it's all right. There is Frostlass is 40, 10 to each your opponent's bench. It's okay. Oh, Origin Form Palkia and Origin Form Dialga are getting their first ever TCG, like regular TCG cards, not V and V Star. So that's like kind of cool. It's not that cool. The cards aren't super good. 60 or 120. I mean, it's whatever. This one's 100, and on a coin flip, you can't attack next turn. Again, pretty whatever, but it's fine. Um, then we have um, what do we have? Most of these aren't super interesting. We have Unknown. Unknown's pretty cool. Unknown's weird, so I feel like a hypocrite saying this, but I think this card's fun. Look at once your turn, you may choose either player. Look at the top card of that player's deck. I was really critical of Porygon for being like super slow, which is really similar to Unknown. However, the thing I like about Unknown is I think it's more interesting. Looking at the top card of your own deck is pretty whatever. It's not yeah, it's kind of bad to be honest. Like it doesn't do that much. Looking at the top card of your opponent's deck though means you know what they'll have in their hand. You know one of their cards, which is really good knowledge. You can use this over and over again every turn. So you can know theoretically their entire hand. It does depend. Like you won't know their opening hand, and you won't know what they get off of like Pokeball or Pokemon communication or Professor's research. But this is still I think pretty interesting. Adds some stuff to the game, and I think it is a worthwhile card to play. Its attacks usable. It's not very good, but it's okay in some situations. So yeah, Unknown. I really like this card. Um, Donphan's kind of like the Togekiss, but it's a stage one, but it costs more. And then we have um, Toxic, which is 20 damage with poison instead of 10. Kind of interesting to see. And then we have, honestly, a lot of these aren't super interesting. Mawile, though, for one colorless, if your opponent's active as a metal, it does a 50, which is like okay. Bronzong here, it does 50, 20 more for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon, and it is all colorless. So Bronzong is kind of interesting. You can pair this with like some generic energy acceleration, which I guess would be Manaphy. There's Dialga EX, but that's metal anyways. Bronzong is fine. Oh, we got a dragon here, Giratina, but it can't really work with any of the energy acceleration, so that's kind of bad. But it does 120 for 300 basic. It's not great. Because of the awkward energy situation, then Noctowl reveals your opponent's hand, and then Shaman. Shaman's really good in my opinion. As long as this Pokemon is on your bench, your active Pokemon's retreat cost is one less. I thought it was. I didn't realize at first it was basics, but Shaman is a card that is, I think, really good, really versatile, and it's really good because it allows you to just go like start kind of whatever in the early game. Most basics I think that people play have one retreat. Some have two definitely, but this is still nice, allowing you to have more maneuverability in the early game. And I think the bench slot it takes up is okay. I don't think this card's an every deck card, but I think it's pretty good. Definitely one of the better cards in the set in my opinion. Then there are the trainers. Irida says heal 40 from each of your water Pokemon. I talked about this before. I talked about most of these before. But this card is fine. It's not really a standout card. To me, it's not like super crazy. Healing is nice. And it's like I'd say it's a little weaker than Erica. Healing multiple Pokemon is pretty niche to be honest, but it's fine. And then you have Barry, which says during this turn, taxes by your Snorlax, Heracross, and Staraptor cost 2 colorless less. And so you have Staraptor, which is 130 for 3 on a stage 2 and 22 itself. I think Staraptor's okay. It's mediocre. It's like good when it's 1. With Barry, I don't think it's quite good enough. Snorlax there too. This is probably the better one. It does 100 for 4, and then this Pokemon is now asleep. I think this card is pretty solid. I don't think it's not great. I think with Barry, it's solid. You have a bunch of HP and tankiness, though. They're not. It's not great. Certainly, I think a weaker tier of cards. Then Heracross. Heracross is a bit more interesting. I think it is 50, and then if on a double coin flip, you get 70 more for if both are heads, which is not super likely. But for 1 energy, 50, it's good. I don't really love this package of cards. None of them really stand out as super strong. They're all like okay. With Barry, they're pretty good. Um, but you only have 2 berries, right? So I think it's pretty underwhelming, but it is, if you want to mess with it, you can do it. Then Celestic Town Elder. This is like the best card in this set, I think. It's a supporter. Put 1 random basic from your discard pile into your hand, which, by the way, you have a discard pile. If you don't know, you do have that. And so this is really nice. If one of your Pokemon gets knocked out, and then you can bring it back. This is just super good for a bunch of different decks. It's pretty consistent. Getting a random one is obviously you'd rather you choose, but you'll probably only have one. I think this card's really good. Oh, I forgot Sudowoodo. This is 50 to an EX, so this is like solid. That's pretty good. But yeah, no, Celestic Town Elder is a card that is, I think, really good. You want to be tossing it into all sorts of decks. Um, yeah, this card is really good in anything. So I don't know exactly too many specific situations. Like if you're playing a solo deck where you just have 2 of 1 Pokemon, or you're really relying on 2 of 1 Pokemon, um, one goes down, then you have the other one, but you might want a third one to switch between the two and tank. It's a good card. I don't know if it's like useful in every such situation, but I think it's solid as a one of in most decks. Um, in single point decks, it's amazing. This is kind of how, if you're like using the EVs and stuff, you could get more value out of those. Overall, a really good card. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell. Tell me down below what you think about these cards. Now that the full set's out, now that we can play with these cards, tell me if you've played with any of these cards so far. I have not, but I'm really excited to. But I hope you enjoyed, and as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.